Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Katie and today we are going to show you how we're planting our backyard garden and our raised garden beds. So come on along with us and we'll show you what we're doing. Alright you guys, so of course it's another windy day. That seems to be all we can get around here when we've got time to work in the garden. So here's our garden. We've got the irrigation all laid out. We just did drip line again here. So this is the same setup we had last year. It's all been rototilled. We've got the drip line all set up. And in this bin, Gary finished up all the irrigation. So we just have PVC pipe with bubblers. And I'm gonna plant the beans here, let them grow up on that trellis. So we're gonna get started and I'm gonna show you how we plant our garden. Okay, you guys, so last week I showed you pulling all the weeds in this garden and I come out here this weekend. It's been exactly 1 week. Look at this sucker. Look at this one. So a little bit of cleanup here to get started, but clearly we're gonna be pulling weeds throughout the season. I just thought I would show you that. You're not alone if this is happening to you. Okay, so we're starting out planting these beans. I have rattlesnake green beans that I started in the greenhouse. A few of them I've started a while back, so they're getting pretty big. So I'm gonna take these out. I just have them in these solo cups. You can see their roots, like there's quite a bit of roots here. So I really should have transplanted these sooner. They grew pretty quickly. I wanted to have some that were already started. So I'm gonna plant these two as close to the edge of this garden bin as I can so that they're able to grow up right there on that trellis. Got a couple of them in the ground and I'm gonna keep going, keep on planting them. If they're long enough, I'm gonna start them on the trellis and we'll see how they look when I get them all planted. All right, you guys, so we're out here planting the garden today. I just wanted to show you our little audience. So the cows are just laying out, enjoying their day, and there's all these birds just surrounding them. Super cute. They're just sitting here looking, relaxing. Thought I'd show you guys what we're looking at, what our view looks like. So we're starting out planting our ground garden, and Gary's over here working on it. What we're doing on this right-hand side of the ground garden is we're putting in zucchini. So I try to put all of our zucchini and yellow squash along the perimeter of the ground garden because those are the vegetables that I find myself picking very frequently. And I'm also trimming up the leaves on zucchini and yellow squash very frequently. So I want to have the easiest access to those plants. It's a little bit easier to get to them when I don't have to walk in the middle. So Gary's planting and I'm just setting out the zucchini plants. I'm trying to position them where I want him to plant them so that he can come along behind me and just plant them. And we're just working together to get this done as quickly as possible because we definitely have a long day ahead of us of planting. Now, while he's working on planting the zucchini, once I get that laid out for him, I'm working on planting more green beans in the raised bed. So you notice Gary's using the hand trowel. We both have hand trowels to use, and then also he has a little tool on his drill. So on the left side of the garden, I'm putting the yellow squash there so that he can come along and also plant that. Now you notice all between the yellow squash and zucchini, the plants are quite big. We started them in solo cups and they've definitely grown pretty large. So as Gary finishes up planting the perimeter of the garden bed there, I am taking plants over and setting them up in our raised garden bed so we can get everything positioned and get that ready to plant. And we're trying to just lay out the plants so that we have an idea where we want to put everything. I definitely have a bunch of plants in the greenhouse. So I'm taking over like beefsteak tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, some peppers, and we're trying to just lay all that out so we know where we want to put everything. Now Gary's moved along here to the other side and he's working on putting in all of that yellow squash that I laid out. And while he's doing that, I'm grabbing some other things to go next to the green beans. So again, he's just using the hand trowel and the drill, switching off between them. That drill has a little attachment that's kind of like an auger bit, and he's using that to put the holes in. Now he did rototill all this, so it's not too difficult to dig these holes. He just finds it a little easier. And while he's doing that, I'm going to keep working on putting in all these green beans. So I've got in quite a bit. Some of them are larger and some of them are smaller. I started this whole tray of these rattlesnake green beans, and they're pole beans. I started this whole tray in the house, but not very early. So they're not really big. You can see they're kind of small here. I did have good germination on the plants. I have a bunch of them. And I'm planting them pretty close together. I'm just carefully taking them out of the tray where I started them and putting them into the ground. And I just dug like a little trench is essentially what I did. And I'm just putting all these little starters, these little seedlings in and hoping that they'll grow and do very well. Now I did want to start my beans, my green beans at different times because I'm hoping to have a continuous harvest off of them. And what I plan to do after this is maybe in 2 weeks to a month, come back in and actually sow some more seeds next to it so they'll just continue to have new sprouts. Now because I have this trellis up, it was a little tough to kind of get everything in there. Initially I was standing in the ground garden bed to plant, and now I'm kind of leaning in from the side. So the benefit of the trellis is it grows right up, but it is a little challenging to reach around when you're planting. So once I got all the green beans planted, I came back around, and the ones that I had started quite a bit earlier in the greenhouse, I'm just working on those to try to gently get them to attach to the trellis that's in place there, that cattle panel really, that I'm using as a trellis. And I'm trying to be real careful. It's super, super windy out, so I'm trying to make sure I don't break off the plants or anything like that. They're healthy and they're pretty big, so I'm just being careful and making sure I get them wound up. Okay guys, so on this side over here, I've just been working away, laying out the plants that I want to put here, just trying to put them in position and think about where I want everything. I'm trying to group things together, so I'm trying to keep the beefsteak tomatoes together, and I definitely want those at the back of this garden bin so that they're well positioned to grow up that cattle panel trellis. We did this last year and it worked really well. It worked amazing for the cherry tomatoes, but it worked really good for the beefsteak tomatoes too. Of course, these are indeterminate tomatoes. They're going to get huge. They're just going to keep on growing. So they'll grow right over this arch and climb right over it, and it makes it pretty easy to pick. So then we finish up with the back garden and we jump to our backyard garden, and we're going to get started here. So we're just bringing plants over and really just doing the same thing we did in the backyard or the back animal yard garden, is positioning the plants so that we know where we want to put everything before we actually start putting them in the ground. Now Gary knew he wanted to put these beefsteak tomatoes in that center. He kind of claimed this bed for his. So he's got his tomato cages set up and he's putting in those beefsteak tomatoes there. And while he's doing that, I'm just going back and forth between the greenhouse, grabbing more and more plants, bringing them out and putting them where I think we should plant them. And I just make adjustments as needed, just so that I can try to fit as many varieties of plants in as possible. And then Gary's just working here to put the beefsteak tomatoes in. Now he really wants to try this year. It's a little different than what we've done before, but he really wanted to put the beefsteak tomatoes in one garden bin by themselves and just let them like have a little bit more space. We definitely crowded them last year. So he's trying this out. That's his little experiment. And I'm just continuing to bring over more and more peppers and other plants for the bins so that we can get everything going. So next what Gary's doing is he's planting these Armenian cucumbers. So we're putting these in the same bin that he put the beefsteak tomatoes in, but we're putting these Armenian cucumbers right next to this cattle panel so they can grow up that arched trellis. They're really kind of a mild cucumber if you've never had an Armenian cucumber. We grew them last year, so this is our second year with the Armenian cucumbers. I'm just setting out additional plants. I'm just trying to decide where I'm going to put all these pepper plants. I really had a variety of seeds that I started with pepper plants this year, and I overestimated how much garden space I had available. So pretty much what I'm thinking at this point is, how can I talk Gary into building me some more raised beds? But anyways, we just set everything out here and try to get it to all fit. I do have a few more plants in the greenhouse. He's going through and just planting everything as I have it positioned. Every year I tend to struggle with like how many plants can I possibly fit into these garden beds? And you see here Gary going behind me. So I pulled out all the weeds, and you can see that where I put all the weeds when I pulled them out is right on the ground, just next to all the garden beds. So Gary happens to notice that I did that and decides to clean up after me. It's very helpful having him around. So anyways, I'm still just setting everything out. And like I was saying, I kind of have a hard time deciding like how much can I fit in these garden beds. I'll start out thinking that I'm going to leave plenty of space so they get a lot of airflow, and just make sure each plant has all its own space, and it'll be really easy to harvest all the vegetables. And then every spring, like every single time, I'm not kidding, I've done this, I put it in and it's like, oh, they'll fit. I can fit a few more. Let me just fit a couple more of these. Or there was one variety of tomatoes that I didn't get in and I want to put it in. So inevitably, every season, every year, I just kind of crowd our garden and just put a lot of stuff in. Now, to be fair, we get such an incredible yield out of our garden. I really don't see a problem with doing that. But I do admit, like around probably July, when the garden is just booming and overgrown, it really is quite a lot to harvest. And I think it could be a lot easier if we had a little bit more space in between the plants, and it was a little bit easier to see all the fruits and vegetables that are being produced so that we can get them. So Gary and I have kind of talked about it and come up with a strategy that we're going to try to leave a little bit more space this year and see how it goes. But I can definitely tell you that for me, that's challenging. I always start more plants than we have room for. This year we had a late freeze, so we lost some of the plants we started in the greenhouse. So we don't have too many extras of each variety. We really only have like a bunch extra beefsteak tomatoes and a bunch extra yellow squash and eggplants. So we did a plant sale also, so we had some extra things left over from the plant sale. But we don't have too many extra plants that we would like to plant out in our garden. So I don't think it's going to be too challenging to give everything space this time. But I just wanted to share with you guys that that's something I do every single year. So in this garden bed, what Gary's doing is he's planting all my peppers. And then he moved on over here to this side where he's planting the tomatoes that I had laid out. Now these are some Roma tomatoes that I wanted to plant. I wanted to make more sauce this year, so I specifically wanted to plant some more of these Romas or San Marzano type tomatoes. So he's putting those in here. And then next we have cucumbers. So last year I grew rattlesnake green beans up this trellis, but this year I wanted to put the cucumbers there and see how that worked out. And I wanted a real dedicated space in the very backyard garden, like the animal yard, for all of the rattlesnake green beans. I wanted to grow a whole lot more this year, so we switched it up. Okay guys, so let me show you what we've done so far out here in the garden. So I'll start with just what's behind me. You can see what's right here. We've got some beefsteak tomatoes. So we put beefsteak tomatoes in these tomato cages. I'm just gonna say for the record, this was Gary's idea for later, when I show you the garden tour later. So those are indeterminate tomatoes. They're gonna be huge. So I'll step up so you can kind of see. So we've got 5 of the tomato cages with those beefsteak tomatoes in them. So we'll see how that turns out. So on the other side over here, we have some Armenian cucumbers. And then behind me, so right behind me, we've got a bunch of peppers. So I'm gonna switch the camera around so you guys can kind of see these better. All right, you guys, so this is what we did, and this is how I'm trying to keep track of what we planted. So Gary was doing some of the planting here. So we have basil, 2 delicata squashes right there in the back. If you haven't tried those, you should totally try them. They're lower carb than some of the other things, and they're really, really good. You can use them instead of potatoes. Peppers. So these are all heirloom peppers. If I want to try to save the seeds this year, I wanted to know what they are. So right here, I've got a lemon drop pepper, the Aji Lemon Drop pepper, and then another one right there. Then I have a Brazilian starfish, and over here I have another pepper. You flip this around, it's a sugar rush peach. So I have 4 of these sugar rush peaches. I have 4 of those here. So I'm going to go ahead and probably plant something else so it can grow up this trellis. And in the back of this bin, it's really hard to get to. We have this cattle panel in the back. So that's why I planted that delicata squash, and I'm gonna probably plant 1 or 2 more things over there so they can kind of grow over that cattle panel and then down on the ground. And we'll utilize that space. And I'll probably plant something else over here around that basil. I wanted the basil in here just to bring some bees over. I'll probably plant something else. So we're not done, but we're done for today. So I wanted to capture what we planted. So we've got some green onions. And then Roma tomatoes. So I've got 4 Roma tomatoes here in the middle, and then some cucumbers. And these are just the Market More 76 cucumbers. I'm going to have them grow up this trellis this year. We planted some on each side. So there's some over here as well. This bed is still empty. Haven't decided what I'm going to put in there yet. There is a trellis for it though, so we can utilize that. This area does get a little bit more shade. So in the morning it gets shade from these olive trees, and in the afternoon, when this cucumber grows up, it's going to kind of shade that bed there. So I'll think of what we're going to put there. Next, over here to this lower bed, we have 2 of these sugar baby watermelons, and the goal will be to try to grow them up this trellis. A basil plant. Now I have some peppers. So these are all bell peppers right here. In the back, there's 1 Roma tomato. It wasn't labeled really good, but that's a Roma tomato. 1 little cherry tomato. It'll be a surprise. It's a rainbow cherry tomato. So we'll see what color those tomatoes are. More bell peppers. And then from the bell peppers, we move over to all the jalapenos. This label fell off. That's a jalapeno. So these are all the jalapenos. On the right, that back one is an early jalapeno. So we'll see if that ends up making a difference between that one and the others. Again, in the back of this bed, I didn't put anything all the way in the back. We have this little cattle panel, again, kind of sideways. So if I wanted to put something trellising up it, I could. I just haven't decided what I'm going to do there yet. So there's a little bit more space. Then I have sweet banana peppers. I have my orange habanero pepper. So all those red cups are the orange habanero. And then I have some other heirlooms. So this is the buena mulata pepper. It's pretty small here. It's kind of, we'll see if that's if that makes it. And then some shishito peppers here, 2 of those. And then Anaheim peppers. These are pretty good. I really like those. They do well for us every year. And then a little bit of space there. So like I said, I can put something to grow up that trellis. So that's what we did this evening or late afternoon here. We got that all in the garden. This is how I'm going to keep track of it. I'm going to come back and label it, but for now, this is how I'm keeping track. I just wanted to take a picture of everything with the cup right next to it. So I should be in pretty good shape. We already have a bloom here on that habanero, so we're looking forward to these producing. Hopefully we do really well with them this year. All right, you guys, Gary's feeding the animals tonight, so I'm going to walk you out and just show you the back garden and show you where we planted everything so far. We do still have some more work to do, but we're making decent progress. It was so windy, we just couldn't get everything done when we wanted to. So I'll take you guys back out here and show you where everything is. All right, so this is what we got planted yesterday. So you saw us planting some of this. It was so windy, we just gave up and came in. So on this left side, all of this is yellow squash on the far left. And some of this is going to be yellow squash. I think that one is, and the rest of these are all zucchini along the front. And then zucchini all along that right side. This is what we have to pick the most often. So I wanted it just on the edges. In the middle, it's going to be a little bit of a mystery. I was in the greenhouse. Gary was planting these, and he just got them in the ground, and we didn't have the labels next to him. I didn't get the labels on them in time before he moved all the cups. So I can tell that they're watermelons. I just don't know which ones. And then some other squash. I know those bigger squash are going to be, they should be at least, our spaghetti squash, because I had those pretty big in the greenhouse. So some of that's spaghetti squash, some of it's some butterbush squash. You can see watermelons. here, here, and here. And we had a few different varieties. So this is just going to be a guessing game. Hopefully whenever they get bigger, we'll see. I really did want to try to keep track of them this year because what happened to me last year is I planted a bunch of stuff. I didn't really care where it was because I knew we would, you know, when we got it, I'll know what it is when it grows. What I didn't think about though is I lost some of my plants. Like the birds got some of them and some of them just failed to thrive. So I could have, if I would have known what failed, I would have been able to get seeds going again and replace it. So we'll just see. Hopefully we'll have really good luck this year. There is a yellow watermelon in there that I'm hoping we do good with. So we'll just see how that all works out. But we're going to have plenty of squash. And the reason we plant just a ridiculous amount of squash is because we predominantly feed that to the animals. They really like it. So we plant a ton of it. And, you know, typically we don't keep up with it. Like it'll get big and they'll just eat it. So that works out pretty good. They like that. Every morning they get some treats. Usually there's at least 1 or 2 squash I can give them. And I'll show you the beans. So I planted a bunch of green beans. So I had a few started in the greenhouse that actually got a pretty good size. So you'll see that to the right. Then I had a bunch of little baby smaller ones that I just started. And so those are all positioned so that they'll grow up this cattle panel. So I'm hoping that does pretty good. And then what I'll do this year, I didn't do last year, but I'm gonna try this year, is once these are, you know, a couple feet, maybe a month from now or so, I'm gonna go throw some more seeds in. My hope is that will allow me to have green beans throughout the season if I do it a couple times. So I'll take you guys along for that experiment and show you how it works. Let me bring you over here to the other side and I can show you, we put a couple eggplants in this side and some herbs. So let me just walk through our little cattle panel trellis and show you what we've got over here. Okay, so we're on the other side here. That's 1 eggplant I have. And those are all the green beans. So I've got 1 eggplant there. That's going to get probably pretty big. Another eggplant right here. I have some basil, some purple basil. It's real tiny, so hopefully it makes it. If you can see it right there. And then I've got more there. So I just put like 6 or 8 little clusters all around here. So hopefully that will make it. Another eggplant. And then I have some sage. So that's what I put in this bed. I think this eggplant's going to get pretty big. Typically we'll just plant 1 or 2 eggplants and then we never even use the eggplants that it produces. But I also usually put it in our backyard garden. So I'm going to try it here because my hope is I can have better access to it and it's a little easier. I tend to get a lot of wasps in the eggplant, and anytime wasps are on stuff, they can keep it. I'm not going to hassle with them. So this is what it looks like, and this is what we've got done so far. All right, you guys, you just saw us plant our garden, and hopefully we inspired you to get something planted out in your garden too. Even if you don't have a lot of space, you can still get started today, even with just a container garden on your patio. So hopefully we've encouraged you to do that, and you can grow right along with us. So if you liked what you saw, please click this link. You can subscribe to our channel and check us out each week. All right, thank you so much. We'll see you guys next week.